Treyarch recently revealed an absolute mountain of information for Black Ops 6 Zombies, showcasing not only the gameplay reveal trailer, but tacked on a 17-minute cut of raw gameplay footage, as well as released a blog post detailing all of the major systemic changes making their way into this brand new era of zombies. And listen, I would be lying to you if I didn't say that everything we have seen so far looks incredible. It would also be disingenuous, though, if I didn't tell you that a part of me is managing my expectations due to the issues we have seen inside of Call of Duty Zombies for the past 5 years. From the way BO4 Zombies ended with a whimper, all the way through MWZ's post-launch content drops, the community has been through quite a lot, and for many, BO6 is going to be the final nail in the coffin if it doesn't live up to the expectations. And while the release for BO6 Zombies appears to be stacked from what we know so far, it's really what happens after which is important, as this live service story can either maintain itself with a strong year or crash and burn as so many have come before it. However, the manner in which Treyarch has been choreographing their marketing, social media, and blog posts feels different than what we are used to, as there is a sense of confidence and transparency that I haven't seen since the lead up to Black Ops 4 Zombies release. And that feeling is quite infectious, but that doesn't mean that you should trust it. Before we discuss the particulars of Black Ops 6 Zombies, I'm going to explain something that I call the next game theory. This idea is based on how many fans, myself included, began to accept a subpar game in the moment under the presumption that with enough time, resources, and passion, that the next time a game is released, it will be the better rendition of it. The usual set of excuses are for this that the devs didn't have any control, they had their budgets cut, there was bad management, etc., etc. And while all those excuses may be true, there is only one group of people that is experiencing any of the fallout: the consumer. And if you've been around the COD Zombies community for a while, you likely know where I'm going with this. But things become complicated when it comes to Treyarch because they are the COD studio that I absolutely love and adore. They have provided myself, and I'm sure many of you listening, with countless positive moments in life that I will cherish forever. But it's important that we understand how we ended up in this precarious place when it comes to our relationship with Treyarch, as they have been the developer inside of the COD community that up until recently had a pretty solid track record. And while no game of theirs has ever been a failure by any stretch, there have been mixed signals sent towards the Zombies community, which all began in 2018 with the launch of Black Ops 4 Zombies. Now, I have an entire series on the channel going over every map inside of BO4 Zombies in detail, breaking down the ups and downs from the dev cycle, as it was entirely hellish for both the community and Treyarch. Major gameplay restructurings, instability at launch, and a new story that fans were just not ready for, as well as a messy DLC season. This brought about a level of turmoil that I don't think the Zombies community had ever really experienced prior. But near the end of the game's lifecycle, Activision had stepped in and pushed Treyarch off of BO4 to help mend COD 2020's development, which was being led by both Raven and Sledgehammer Games. The two studios were allegedly in the midst of a tumultuous relationship, and since BO4 Zombies didn't resonate with the community at large, Activision thought it best to cancel all major plans for both the Ether and Chaos story, cutting Treyarch's dev team and the budget substantially while outsourcing the remaining maps, Alpha Omega and Tag der Toten, to Activision Shanghai. And now this is when the first next game theory seed was planted. It became very common in the community to hear ideas around the internet such as, well, it wasn't Treyarch's fault, Activision pulled them from BO4. Treyarch just couldn't help it. Sledgehammer Games and Raven couldn't get along. It's really their fault. Or don't worry guys, now that Treyarch has resources for their new game, we will be back at it in no time. And then
Zombies.
While Cold War Zombies is by no means a bad game, it left a lot to be desired with its simplistic gameplay mechanics, less difficult main quests, and uninspired art design, not to mention the entire saga surrounding Outbreak. Cold War certainly did push Zombies into the fringes of what would become a new era for the mode, but it did it at the expense of that creativity and narrative depth that we have all become super fond of. And it's true, there is a lot to love about Cold War, but sadly, it's very easy to see that this game was put together under dire circumstances. You can feel it, which makes it impressive that Treyarch managed to get anything out like this at all. But during the life cycle, these same excuses started to bubble up in the community. It was the pandemic, they worked from home. Don't worry guys, Treyarch's next game, that will be the one. When the Vanguard Zombies reveal trailer debuted, there was a wash of relief over myself and the community that finally Treyarch was bringing back style and beautiful art design back into the mode, and I couldn't wait to get my hands on it. But then the game launched, and while many players hoped the devs would have time to develop great maps and locations for us to experience, it simply never happened, nor was it ever meant to happen. Not only is Vanguard Zombies by far the worst iteration in COD Zombies history, it lived up to none of the expectations that Treyarch had set up for the community. Off-putting gameplay mechanics and roguelite ideas led to this amalgamation of Outbreak and round-based stuffed into these pathetic challenge-style maps. Almost everything fell flat on its face. And while Shi No Numa Reborn was surprisingly a decent experience, the entirety of that development cycle wasn't really meant to be spent on providing fans with worthwhile content, but more so to build out the zombies mechanics inside of this new Call of Duty engine. Then, finally, some good news leaked into the community around the time that Vanguard season was wrapping up. Rumors in games media started spreading that Treyarch would be getting an extra year to make their next game and would release in 2024. And this was great news, but it inevitably meant that fans started saying those classic phrases again, because we all know by now the next game is going to be the one where Treyarch blows our minds. And to be honest, at this point in time, I think most people were okay with this. It was clear that Treyarch was overworked and under an immense amount of pressure, as the lead Zombies dev team didn't even work on Vanguard, meaning something had to give eventually, as Treyarch clearly needed more time to bring their next vision to life. But then something strange happened. Modern Warfare Zombies. It was at this point where Zombies fans were officially beginning to get sick and tired of being jerked around. A third attempt at revitalizing the Zombies formula, and still no round-based. But then there was a little bit of a conflict here, as Kevin Drew and the lead dev team were working on this new Zombies installment, and there also appeared to be no visible crunch or resource issues, at least from what we could see from the nosebleeds. Then the game launched, and to most people's surprise, MWZ ended up being pretty decent. Not perfect, but it was acceptable. And as long as Treyarch wouldn't end up overburdened or could continue to work on COD 2024 while keeping MWZ fully updated like they promised. Wait, what's that? Treyarch abandoned the project after Season 1 and left the remaining DLC cycle to a handful of Infinity Ward devs? That's weird. Why would they do that to the most popular third mode for a Modern Warfare title in COD history? But don't worry guys, Treyarch needs all hands on deck so that they can cook in the next game. Do you see what I'm talking about? It has been 5 straight years of this, and to be honest with you all, I'm getting a bit exhausted. And what is ultimately frustrating is that Treyarch really has had a lot of bad luck, mismanagement from their publisher, and spends more time cleaning up other studios' messes rather than focusing on their own projects. I feel for the developers. I do. However, when it comes to fulfilling a service, there is a level of expectation that the product will meet a certain quality bar, especially when the company funding the product has an estimated worth of nearly $75 billion. Now, I don't think fans will ever know just how much pull the upper management at Treyarch, Infinity Ward, and Sledgehammer Games have exactly, but I can't imagine that they have absolutely no bargaining power when it comes to what Activision wants, and this trend of hyping up a Call of Duty release and then tons of mistakes following afterwards is a problem for the entire franchise, not just with Treyarch, which leads me to believe that the developers aren't so innocent in all of this, and the Activision bad argument can only carry so much water. But even if Activision is the sole culprit to all of this madness, it still doesn't excuse any of the issues we are seeing in the franchise, because at the end of the day, the customers are the ones paying for a product they desperately desire, and receiving a plethora of stability issues, incomplete launch due to withholding content for seasonal DLC models, and even sometimes players are receiving a completely different version that devastates the core ideology that is Call of Duty. I understand that myself and many of you out there will never know just how hard it is to make a AAA title, or ever be able to comprehend how difficult it is to manage a company as large as Activision Blizzard. It's tough, but there is no gun to any dev's head, and it's a job just like any other. So listen, I'm not trying to be all doom and gloom here. I'm just trying to look at things from a bird's eye view, because remember, if you are working making $17 an hour, it's going to take you around 4 hours of your physical labor in order to purchase this game, and even more if you buy a deluxe edition, bundles, battle passes, t-shirts, memorabilia, whatever you want. So please, be responsible with your finances and have some respect for yourself and your time. But what does any of this have to do with Black Ops 6 Zombies? Are we finally at the next game where Treyarch is going to deliver? Well, actually, yeah, things are looking pretty good. The way Treyarch has been handling the promotion and marketing campaigns thus far has been impactful, and it seems that they have put these past 4 years of development to good use. Let's face it, the level of transparency leading up to the release is completely unprecedented, and while the moments up through the reveal of BO4 Zombies were somewhat similar, present-day Treyarch is revealing their hand in a way that we haven't quite seen before, and I gotta say, it's very refreshing.
She's with me. Breaking you out was my plan.
Treyarch has been on a rampage releasing content drop after content drop, showcasing nearly everything from a gameplay point of view. And this is important to note because we still don't know if the new gameplay systems lead to depth and replayability, which is why we're seeing so much Cold War Zombies 2.0 chatter at the moment, but more on this a little bit later in the video. So far, the public has seen a brand new gameplay reveal trailer for Terminus and teaser for Liberty Falls, a 17-minute Terminus gameplay video, multiple developer breakdowns, tons of tweets, and of course, an enormous blog post covering every little detail Black Ops 6 Zombies has to offer. And things are looking really promising. But why is Treyarch being so open and upfront about this new installment of Black Ops 6? Compared to what has happened the last half decade, this all seems completely out of left field. But I think it's for a couple of reasons. Firstly, I believe that Kevin Drew becoming the face of Zombies has given him an opportunity to do things his own way. And while I only have circumstantial evidence for this, he does seem to have a high level of integrity and wants the Zombies community to be in a good place. But overall, his method of interacting with players is in stark contrast to those who came before him, and I'm glad it is. Under the leadership of Jimmy Zielinski and Jason Blundell, there was always a level of mystery that kept things intriguing and fresh, but we have never been given a slew of videos explaining in great detail how the gameplay mechanics work, what the maps actually look like, and how intense the Easter eggs are going to be. And it's not that former dev teams never showcased gameplay elements in earlier Black Ops titles, because they most certainly did. You can go back and watch trailers where they showcase wonder weapons and other mechanics inside of the new map packs. The difference is, old Treyarch would tease a mix of gameplay and narrative that would be just enough to wet your whistle while leaving the rest of the systems to be discovered by the player. And I think Black Ops 2 is great evidence of this, as people would argue endlessly about how perma-perks worked or how to get shotguns rank, and even inside of Black Ops 3 Zombies up until very recently, people were interacting with the wrong item inside of the Dreisendrach Easter egg when the player would travel back in time. The mythos that permeated inside of the Zombies community around small details like this would always be super fun, and I think intertwined perfectly with the opaque nature of the Ether storyline. But as long as that sentiment is preserved and none of the large narrative bits or quest content is revealed prior to launch, I don't see anything wrong with showing players what they are literally buying into before the game is released to the public. The second reason we are seeing such levels of honesty from the developers is they know that we feel burned. They know that we were dissatisfied with how Black Ops 4 Zombies was stripped of its resources. They know that we were completely unhappy with Vanguard Zombies, and they certainly know how divided MWZ made people, as it was a further push away from the classic round-based survival formula. But overall, I believe that Kevin Drew and the other developers at Treyarch understand that Cold War Zombies fractured the player base in quite a significant way, to the point where every sub-faction inside of the community felt alienated at some point in time. Now again, whether these games resulted due to poor management from Activision, resource allocation, or even from the pandemic, Cold War Zombies and the issues in the player base still occurred, and they needed to be addressed. And while it is important to be understanding of the bigger picture, it looks like this new era of Treyarch devs has finally found their identity as a workforce. And this can take time when major leadership changes occur in a company. This confidence inside of the studio has given Treyarch the foothold that they need to take Black Ops 6 Zombies in the direction they believe best, while also telling fans that they are listening and have our best interests in mind. Now, I am sure that some of you disagree with my characterization regarding Treyarch having our best interests in mind, as I have read many comments around the community stating that Zombies is dead, this is just Cold War 2.0, and that Zombies will never be what it once was. And to be quite honest with you, I kind of agree with that sentiment, but not in the way that you might think. Overall, yes, it is true that this is the next step in the evolution that is Black Ops Cold War. And I don't necessarily have an issue with that, as long as Treyarch addresses certain foundational infrastructure which negatively impacted Cold War Zombies. And these core elements can be broken down into roughly 4 categories: maps and art design, narrative, gameplay mechanics that led to less difficulty, and Easter egg quest simplicity. When it comes to the maps and art design, Treyarch is clearly taking a huge step in the right direction. Not only are we getting 2 maps at launch, but the way they are designed and stylized is a huge step up from anything that we had seen from Cold War Zombies up through Modern Warfare Zombies. Terminus looks dark, dank, and brooding with a variety of different play spaces and areas to explore. The designs of the enemies look fantastic with that body horror theme that has been introduced, and depending on when you are watching this video, what we have so far seen of Liberty Falls also looks rather appealing. There is a hidden Dark Ether section of the map that we can teleport to, and it looks much more akin to the style of MWZ's Dark Ether, which I think will work well with BO6's aesthetic. Treyarch is even implementing something they call a living world, where zombies are out and about in the map prior to you opening doors. They are eating security guards, breaking out of the containment tanks, and twitching inside of body bags. And while this isn't the first time we have seen this in Zombies, as this was done inside of World War II, Treyarch has taken this to the next level in the sense that randomization will be much more grand, giving the player the illusion that Terminus is a living, breathing play space, whether your console is powered on or not. But that's not all. Treyarch also claimed that they have heard the cry from the community about how every map in Cold War was a bland facility or reskinned from the campaign, and so they are taking a huge effort to ensure that every map is original in some way, shape, or form to its locale and design. I would also love to see Treyarch expand on their level design by adding in more secret areas, whether that be hidden rooms or sectioned off play spaces that can only be accessed by completing Easter eggs, or even more important, having spaces that evolve the map or take you to a new area entirely. Some great examples of this in previous iterations are most boss fight arenas like Blood of the Dead or Dreisendracht, the Skull of Non-Sapwe room in Zetsubo, Forsaken changing appearance after turning on the power, or even how Tag der Toten completely changed after the Easter egg was finished. But instead of these being small set-piece moments, imagine if they impacted the experience in ways that we hadn't seen before. Now, I hope that Treyarch has more artistic foresight than to just throw a purple coat of paint on these ideas, as details like these are super important to create immersion and a feeling of in-game evolution. Of course, this is assuming that all the gameplay and story bits are properly placed, and I would hate to see some masterful evolution fall to the wayside simply because we have to put everything in a box that is known as the Dark Ether. Speaking of narrative, we are continuing with the Dark Ether storyline, but we have a set crew returning. A set crew is always a positive addition to the game overall, as it does add a subtle layer of depth to the map that feels natural through the conversation of the characters. However, the Dark Ether storyline just isn't that interesting, and if the characters themselves don't have an idiosyncratic world to play off of, there is reason to be concerned that having this set crew won't elevate the experience, assuming that their personalities can't be fully realized. But with the body horror designs and use of strange experimentation taking place inside of the prison, I'm hoping that Treyarch is willing to take some risks here by upping the stakes of the story and going to places we weren't at all expecting. I hope they kill off crew members in the middle of the season and have us play as somebody else, or do something wild like have 8 characters again similar to Alpha Omega, just something to create stakes. That's it. And if every single map is just a fetch quest and our characters are simply going through the motions, I'm not really sure how having a set crew will bring back any of the magic that people think is missing. I think one of the biggest issues people had with Cold War, though, wasn't even necessarily the lack of a crew or the slow start of the Dark Ether story, but more so had a problem with the new choice of gameplay mechanics, which focused more on progression and grind, opposed to the challenging in-depth gameplay loop with rewards. And while I won't get into the specifics of all the gameplay mechanics from Cold War Zombies here today, as I'm working on a retrospective for it, the simplest way to describe Cold War's gameplay systems was death by 1,000 paper cuts. There were so many small changes that all compounded into one another that naturally emerged into a much more simple experience that alienated many fans. It wasn't that any one of these systemic changes were bad in their own right, they were just set up in a manner which benefited a much more casual audience by designing the game in such a way that was advantageous to unlocking the entire Ether Crystal skill tree system. Obviously, we won't know until launch, but Treyarch really seems to have taken the feedback seriously about heavy appeal to casual play inside of Black Ops Cold War Zombies, and has renovated and redesigned BO6 Zombies gameplay in a method that looks quite appealing. Now, I know there are some things that people are still annoyed about when it comes to like the weapon rarity systems, loadout systems, armor, and salvage, but it's important to remember that the game is going to be balanced in a completely different way, meaning that just because some of these ideas previously would have been in Cold War doesn't mean they will work identically in BO6. And while I would prefer the game to not have some of these mechanics inside of Black Ops 6, from the looks of it, it seems that bringing back a more challenging zombies experience is at the forefront of Treyarch's mind. If you watch clips from Dalek and some of the other YouTubers, you will see that they claim they ran out of ammo really easily and that guns felt weak compared to the round that they were on. And now obviously Treyarch is going to balance things out like this in future patches, but it speaks to their mindset about difficulty tuning as they are pushing more towards the opposing worldview that juxtaposes Cold War zombies. This means that despite having loadouts, weapon rarities, etc., as long as the difficulty curve is tuned properly to ensure an element of challenge, I can't really see it being an issue. But when it comes to the armor system, it looks like the devs may have taken a step back here. Inside of Cold War, the armor vest would replenish automatically as you would run over the plates to refill the armor meter. But in BO6, the player has to manually replate themselves. Of course, it goes without saying that I wish we were getting shields back inside of BO6, but I also kind of feel like replating your vest is a good idea. In theory, it should add a layer of strategy and intensity to the gameplay loop, where if you don't get away from the horde quickly, you will crash and burn. But if the armor depletes too quickly, replating in a horde mode could be quite annoying. And while I'm happy that armor isn't passively replenishing itself like it did in Cold War, there needs to be something like the golden armor plates inside of MWZ, where the vest will refill automatically and more quickly when done manually. Treyarch has also removed the skill tree system by building an augment system, which adds an additional bonus feature to your perks, field upgrades, and ammo mods, which in theory is going to be much better as it will lead to gameplay variety depending on the map we are playing, and since you can only apply 2 at a time, there won't be this sense of being overpowered quickly into the match, as players won't have 5 buffs attached to all mechanics permanently. Having tons of little changes catering towards casual play are exactly why Cold War Zombies felt too easy, because over time they stack on one another, which causes a power creep to occur. My hope is that there are more mechanics that push the other direction so that a dance between being over and underpowered can occur. Gobblegums are also back, and I'm sure most of you are already aware that these are playing off of the MP score streak system, where you can acquire and hold up to 3 gums at a time, and you can activate them whenever you want, even simultaneously. They are also completely earnable in-game as you tick up the rounds and require no in-game currency or real-world money to purchase. The Gobblegum system and the augment system seem to pair quite nicely with one another from the bird's eye view that we have as of now, but again, only time will tell. There is also a lot of variety when it comes to killing zombies. There is the standard loadout, which is 2 guns and a melee weapon, the wonder weapon, field upgrades, tactical and lethal items, awesome traps, support streaks, and the new item called mutant injections. All of this is fantastic, as when you combine the methodology of being able to kill zombies in different manners, it keeps that gameplay loop fresh, and with Treyarch stating that this is going to be the hardest round 100 we have experienced in quite a while, I'm excited to see how this new engine handles slaughtering the undead, as it looks chunky, bloody, and fast-paced. There is so much gameplay-wise to dive into that I haven't even touched on everything that's coming on launch. Day 1 Black Ops 6 Zombies is going to be packed to the brim with great gameplay content, and that's where I think some people are feeling a bit concerned, because with all of the information that we have so far, all of the context that we have learned, it's all from the gameplay perspective, and when Cold War Zombies was primarily gameplay-centric and not narrative or Easter egg-centric, it really gave players another arrow in their quiver against Treyarch, which is why Treyarch can't fail here and needs to absolutely crush it in the main and side quest department. There is no excuse for the devs to not have made an absolutely diabolical main quest. With all of the difficulty tuning favoring the tougher zombies experience from general gunplay, zombie AI, and the claim that the round 100s are the hardest to achieve in years, I am hoping that Treyarch knocks it out of the park with Easter eggs. Finding the balance between fun and challenging is certainly important, but even when it comes to the boss fight, and I don't think I'm alone here, people don't want to beat the Easter egg on their first or second try. They want to feel a sense of adversity. Kevin Drew and the other devs have made claims that this is a beast of a main quest, but what does that mean? Are they talking about the difficulty? Are they talking about the size of the map for Easter egg hunting? Or are they just talking about the boss fight as maybe it's a literal beast? You never know with Treyarch, as they drop hints inside of their work all of the time, or at least they used to. But if we take the claim at face value and assume that it simply means the quest is more difficult, then in tandem with the other gameplay mechanics that are leaning towards a harder difficulty, and even with the main quest being guided for players after a few weeks of it being solved, Treyarch is showing favor to the more diehard fans of the mode, and it's about damn time. Hell, we're even getting out-of-game rewards like weapon skins for completing the main quest the old-fashioned way, which we have been asking for since Black Ops 4. Speaking of rewards though, Treyarch also needs to make sure that the rewards for side Easter eggs are actually viable and unique rather than redundant like they were inside of Cold War. The entire purpose of a side quest is to follow the rabbit trail until it leads to a reward that that pushes past the boundary rules of the game. Let me give you some examples. In Terminus, if players complete a side quest, the reward could be something like adding another major augment to your perk. Perhaps it's completely random, maybe sometimes you'd get another buff to Juggernog, or it could be a buff to Melee Macchiato. Either way, it pushes past the confines of the rules, allowing the player to become more overpowered, assuming that they choose to do so. Inside of Cold War Zombies, a lot of the side eggs would just reward you with things that you could just buy from the table or a machine. There was a free perk Easter egg inside of Firebase Z, but why bother when you could just kill zombies for 2 more rounds and then buy it from the Wonder Fizz? There's no perk limit inside of the game, so there's no point in doing a task to fulfill a mechanic made for the vanilla version of the mode. Of course, it's fine to have free Wonder Weapon Easter eggs or free Gobblegum Easter eggs. These are okay, but the bigger side Easter eggs need to have rewards that push back against the ceiling of the BO6 rules so that players can break through. That anti-authority punk rock attitude is crucial to COD Zombies' DNA, and Lord knows I want to see that back. After breaking things down from a more generalized perspective, it appears that Treyarch is making great effort to listen to the Zombies community, is attempting to cater to all areas of the fan base, and really wants to usher in a new Zombies era. And to answer the question and purpose of this video, I'm going to say that yes, I think we should trust Treyarch. They have addressed nearly every major concern that fans have had, from bringing back the moody aesthetic, increasing difficulty of Easter eggs in general gameplay, Gobblegums returning and are not paid to win, and they redesigned the Cold War RPG system so it wasn't a permanent solution, allowing for fluctuation inside of each match. Kevin Drew and the new cohort of Treyarch developers really do seem to care, and I am open to giving them another chance. And while I do believe that Treyarch is taking the mode in the right direction, I don't think we are out of the woods just yet, as there is one more important element that we won't find out until after the game releases, and that has to do with post-launch content. We have no idea where the story is going or what the remainder of the season is going to be. We also don't know if the game will have proper stability, or even if it feels good to play, since we just don't have it in our hands. How many maps will there be post-launch? Will the art direction only be purple dark ether rifts like in MWZ? Are we only going to get a fraction of the content that we should, like we did in MW3's lifecycle? Are we getting new enemies for each map? What happens if there are dissenting voices to the difficulty? Will then Treyarch nerf it for the casual? What's going on with COD 2025? Is it a Black Ops title? Will it affect zombies? Is Outbreak coming back? There is so much unknown, and Treyarch is talking such a big game, and I don't want myself or any other fans to be let down if they go back on all of their major plans and promises. But even hypothetically, if Treyarch delivers on everything perfectly, what about Activision? Will Treyarch be pulled off their game to work on another studio's title? Will Activision slash Treyarch's budget for reasons that we'll never know? It's quite concerning when you know the history of Activision's track record. It does appear that Treyarch is kicking ass and doing a lot to revitalize the Zombies community. So hopefully things can continue to go smoothly, as not only does Treyarch deserve a great year with Black Ops 6, but so do we.